Here's a date I want you to write down. 2032. That's 6 years from right now. And according to the Congressional Budget Office's latest projections, that's the year the Social Security Trust Fund runs out of reserves. Not goes bankrupt, not disappears, but runs out of the cushion that's been covering the gap between what comes in and what goes out. And when that happens, benefits get cut automatically. No vote required, no warning, just less money in your check. The CBO's number is a 23% across-the-board reduction.
23% for everyone at the same time.
And here's what makes this one really sting. We've been here before. We fixed it once, in 1983, and then we just kind of forgot to fix it again.
That is today's episode. Welcome to Trek4Wealth. I'm Avery.
And I'm Grant.
Today, we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most important financial stories that almost nobody under 50 is paying close attention to: Social Security. We are going to look at how it was built, why the math is breaking down, what the 2032 deadline actually means for your check, and what you can do about it right now, regardless of how old you are or how many years you have until retirement.
Because this one affects everybody. If you're 35, this shapes how you save. If you're 55, this shapes when you claim. If you're already retired, this is your money we're talking about.
Let's get into it.
All right. August 14, 1935. Franklin Roosevelt signs the Social Security Act into law. The Great Depression has been grinding for 6 years. A quarter of Americans are out of work. And the elderly, there's basically no safety net for them at all. The best estimates are that in 1934, more than half of elderly Americans lacked sufficient income to support themselves.
More than half.
More than half. And what existed at the state level was a joke. About 30 states had some form of old age pension by 1935, but only about 3% of the elderly were actually receiving benefits. The average payout was 65 cents a day.
65 cents?
A day. So FDR builds this program. Payroll taxes start in 1937, monthly benefits begin in January 1940. And the design, at its core, is a pay-as-you-go system. Workers paying in today fund the retirees collecting today. Simple, elegant, and for a while, it worked beautifully.
So what was the original math based on?
The ratio. In 1950, just 15 years after the law was signed, there were 16 workers paying into Social Security for every one beneficiary collecting. 16 to 1. With those odds, you could fund a very generous program on very modest payroll taxes.
16 workers for every one retiree.
16. Now, fast forward to 2024, that ratio is 2.7 workers per beneficiary, and it's still falling.
We went from 16 to 1 to less than 3 to 1.
And nobody changed the fundamental architecture of the program. The same basic structure that worked with 16 payers per recipient is now trying to function with fewer than 3. That's the core of what's breaking.
So when did people first realize this was coming?
Oh, they've known for a long time. By the early 1980s, the trust fund was hemorrhaging. Congress had known since the mid-70s that the numbers were deteriorating. And by 1982, the projections showed the fund could be insolvent as early as August 1983. Not 2032, 1983. They had months.
The fund was going to run out in months?
Months. So Reagan, and this is the part I love, Reagan and House Speaker Tip O'Neill, who were political opposites on virtually everything, quietly got their teams in a room together. And they stood up a bipartisan commission led by a then little-known economist named Alan Greenspan, the Greenspan Commission. And in 1983, they delivered a rescue plan.
What did the fix actually look like?
It was a painful compromise. Both sides gave something up. Payroll taxes went up, the retirement age was gradually raised from 65 to 67. That change finally fully phased in just this year, in 2026, for anyone born in 1960 or later. They delayed a cost of living adjustment 6 months, and for the first time, high earners started paying income taxes on part of their Social Security benefits.
Neither side got everything they wanted.
That's exactly right. Republicans accepted a tax increase. Democrats accepted a benefit adjustment. They split the difference, and it worked. It was the last time Congress cut Social Security benefits and raised taxes on it and lived to tell about it. That was 1983, and it is the last time Social Security was fundamentally reformed.
43 years ago.
43 years ago. A lot has changed since 1983.
Okay, so walk me through where we actually are right now. What does the 2032 clock look like up close?
So here are the facts as they stand today. The Congressional Budget Office updated its projections in March 2026 and moved the depletion date for the Old Age and Survivors Trust Fund to 2032, 1 year earlier than the previous estimator, 2033. The Social Security trustees themselves place it at 2033, based on slightly different assumptions. Either way, multiple independent estimates now point to the early 2030s, and every update in recent years has moved that date closer, not further away.
And what actually happens at depletion? Because I hear runs out and people think Social Security disappears.
This is so important to get right. Depletion does not mean Social Security goes to zero. The program collects payroll taxes every single week from working Americans. That revenue keeps flowing regardless of the trust fund balance. What depletion means is that the trust fund, the reserve that's been covering the gap between incoming payroll taxes and outgoing benefits, runs dry. And at that point, the program can only pay out what's coming in. Under the CBO's current projection, that covers about 77% of scheduled benefits.
77%. So a 23% cut automatically?
Automatically. No vote required. It's baked into current law. Congress would have to act to prevent the cut, and right now, Congress has not acted.
What's driving the acceleration? Why is 2032 earlier than 2033?
Three things converging at once. First, demographics. Baby boomers are retiring in massive waves, and they're living longer than the program was ever designed to support. Remember that 16-to-1 ratio in 1950? It's now 2.7-to-1. Second, the economy. Real GDP growth slowed to about 1.4% in the fourth quarter of 2025. Slower growth and a softening labor market means slower payroll tax inflows, exactly the wrong direction when the fund is already under pressure. Third, the One Big Beautiful Bill. The senior tax deduction in that legislation is projected to reduce Social Security's incoming tax revenue by $168 billion over 10 years, and that hastens trust fund depletion by up to 6 months, according to official analysis.
So the same bill that was supposed to help seniors is accelerating the timeline on the program they depend on most?
That is the uncomfortable math, yes. And there's more. Higher inflation, driven by oil prices and tariffs, is pushing up the annual cost of living adjustment. The CBO is forecasting a COLA of 3.1% for 2027. Every dollar more in COLA benefits draws the trust fund down faster.
How big is that shortfall in dollar terms over the long haul?
Penn Wharton's budget model puts the 75-year shortfall at $25 trillion. $25 trillion between projected revenues and promised benefit. That is not a rounding error. That is a structural gap that has to be closed by some combination of higher taxes, lower benefits, or a very different design than the one we have today.
$25 trillion and 6 years on the clock? Okay, let's be fair. What is the case that this gets fixed before 2032?
The case is real and worth taking seriously. First, Congress has done this before. The 1983 fix was considered politically impossible until it happened. Reagan and Tip O'Neill were further apart ideologically than most politicians today on this specific issue, and they found a deal. The template exists.
And is there actually movement in Washington right now?
There is. The Senate Budget Committee held a hearing in March 2026, specifically on the path forward for Social Security. At least one senator noted that the 2026 class is the first group of newly elected senators who will have to confront the depletion date within their own 6-year term. That changes the political calculus.
So the urgency is finally landing?
The urgency is becoming harder to ignore. Proposals on the table include raising the payroll tax rate, lifting the taxable earnings cap, currently at $184,500, above which high earners stop paying in, creating an investment fund for the trust, and various combinations of benefit adjustment. One senator has proposed that individuals earning over $400,000 per year should pay into Social Security on investment income as well as wages.
What's the case that it doesn't get fixed in time?
The case against is simply political history. Congress has known about this trajectory for decades. The trust fund ratio was declining every year from 1970 through 1983. They waited until there were literally months of runway left before acting. Prediction markets at the end of 2025 were pricing the odds of Social Security reform passing in reconciliation at essentially zero. And the two most obvious levers, raising taxes and cutting benefits, are each political poison for either of the two parties.
The math is clear, the politics are not.
The history of Social Security reform is really the history of waiting until the last possible moment and then doing what everyone always knew had to be done.
All right, here's what we're here for. What do you actually do with this information? Walk us through it.
Okay, 5 moves. And these work whether Congress fixes this in 2028 or waits until 2031. Wealth move number 1. Get your Social Security statement. Go to ssi.gov and create your My Social Security account if you don't have one. Your statement shows exactly what you've earned in credits and your projected benefit at 62, 67, and 70. Most people have never looked at this number. You need to know it. It is one of the most valuable financial documents you have access to.
And most people just haven't done this?
Most people have no idea what their benefit estimate actually is. Start there. Wealth move number 2. Do not claim early because you're scared. This is the trap. People hear 2032 benefit cuts and they think, I'll just claim at 62 and lock in what I can before it goes away. This is almost always the wrong move. If you claim at 62 versus waiting until 70, the difference is roughly 77% more in your monthly benefit at 70. Every year you delay past your full retirement age, you earn an 8% guaranteed increase. There is no investment in the world that reliably delivers 8% guaranteed, no market risk.
Wait, 8% guaranteed for each year you wait?
8% guaranteed for each year of delay between full retirement age and 70. That is remarkable. Fear-based early claiming destroys that. Wealth move number 3. Build your own floor independent of Social Security. This is the big one for younger listeners. Treat Social Security as a bonus, not a foundation. Max your 401k. The 2026 limit is $24,500 or $32,500 if you're over 50. Open or contribute to a Roth IRA. That's $7,500 in 2026. The Roth is especially powerful here because withdrawals in retirement are tax-free, which means Social Security benefit cuts or tax changes don't touch it.
Build a floor that Congress can't vote away.
Exactly right. Wealth move number 4. If you're within 10 years of retirement, run the scenarios. Get a retirement planner or a fee-only financial advisor to model 2 scenarios. One where you receive 100% of your projected Social Security benefit, and one where you receive 77%. If the 77% scenario breaks your plan, you need to know that now, not in 2031. The gap between those 2 scenarios might be $300 or $400 a month. That is adjustable today. It is not adjustable the week after you retire.
And the 5th move.
Wealth move number 5. Pay attention to the politics. I know that sounds unusual for a financial show, but the 2026 midterms and the next 2 years of Senate activity will directly determine whether Congress acts before the clock hits zero. This is one of those rare issues where individual citizens contacting their representatives actually moves the needle, because every politician of every party is afraid of being the one who cuts Social Security. Constituent pressure has historically been the thing that gives politicians the cover they need to act on the fixes they already know are necessary.
Because it was your paycheck that funded this program for your whole career.
Every American worker paying FICA taxes has been paying into the system with the explicit promise that it would be there when they needed it. This is not a favor. This is a promise. Here's the thing about Social Security that gets lost in all the noise. FDR signed that law in 1935 because he had watched half of the elderly in America fall into poverty during the Depression. He built a floor under a generation that had none. And for 90 years, that floor has held. The Greenspan Commission in 1983 proved that when the political will exists, the math can be fixed. Reagan and Tip O'Neill, who disagreed on virtually everything else, sat down and made an uncomfortable deal because they understood what was at stake. That deal held for 43 years. The question isn't whether Social Security can be fixed. It can. The question is whether Washington will act before the clock runs out or wait, as they did in 1983, until there are months left on the runway. What we can control is our own preparation. Build the floor Congress can't touch. Know your numbers. Don't let fear drive bad decisions. Preparing without predicting. Always.
That's Trek4Wealth. We traced Social Security from 1935, when 65 cents a day was what passed for a safety net, through the 1983 Greenspan Commission rescue, all the way to the 2032 trust fund depletion clock. The key numbers: a 23% automatic benefit cut if Congress doesn't act, a 2.7 to 1 worker to beneficiary ratio, down from 16 to 1 in 1950. A $25 trillion 75-year shortfall, and 6 years on the clock. And 5 wealth moves you can start on today. If this one hit home for you, and it should, share it. Send it to your parents, your kids, anyone who has a stake in this program. That's all of us. Hit subscribe, because we have a lot more ground to cover. And as always, keep trekking.